Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Good evening. Welcome to Direct Connection. Coming up tonight, we'll get a demonstration of how to properly put on and wear a face mask. We'll get the do's and don'ts of protective masks. That's coming up. First tonight, 45% of Americans say that their mental health has been affected by the coronavirus epidemic. Therapists are busy, hotlines are busy. Joining us now by Skype from Frederick is Lisa Hughes. She is a licensed certified social worker and clinical therapist. Lisa, thanks for being with us. Curious what you are hearing from your clients.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I think overall, what we're seeing pretty much in every client from all age ranges, a real big spike in anxiety about this entire situation. A lot of fear of the unknown. And because of all the unknowns, I think it's just making everyone feel like they're a little bit on eggshells and feeling like they're not sure what's going on. And so really anxiety is the primary symptom that I'm seeing come through the office.
You were telling me that this, for many people, is a traumatic event. Certainly many people, increasing numbers of people, know somebody directly or indirectly who's been affected. But for a lot of people, this is maybe the first significant trauma, you would say?
Yes. So I think when we think of trauma, we usually think of, for example, someone who's been to war will have PTSD or traumatic symptoms is a really good example. Trauma comes in all forms and in all scales. And something like this, trauma is essentially something that changes your life and has negative effects. And this, for many people, is the first traumatic event that come in and changed their life so drastically that it can be really difficult to cope with because everything changed and you had no control over that change. And that's what tends to make it a trauma-based event for a lot of people.
So what are you telling people in your practice, people that you're familiar with and maybe new people coming to you? What's your basic advice?
So one is to focus on your environment and the things that you actually can control. Right now, because there is so much unknown, we don't have a timeline, we're not sure how long we'll be living this way. It tends to be better to focus on what's in front of you, what you can control, what you can do to structure your day. For example, I've advised a lot of people, especially if you're working from home, to go ahead and get up and treat it like a regular day. To get up, get dressed, start your work day, make sure that you're focusing on what's lying in that day versus big picture, which leads to a lot of anxiety because we're not sure what the picture is right now. So that's one thing, really just tap into what you can do in your own environment to feel like you have some say in your everyday life.
How about exposure to the news? I'm in the news business. I like the news, but wouldn't advise watching it, 24 hours a day.
I would say for most people, it's not a good idea, even though we appreciate the news and we need updates. I would say that if you're spending your day on all forms of social media, news in the background, scrolling on your phone, looking at every and all story, it's going to be detrimental to your mental health. It's good to check in, and in particular, you're in the state of Maryland, you want to hear what Governor Hogan has to say and what might apply to you. But after that, I would really suggest turning off the TV or logging off Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and giving yourself a break so that your brain can focus on other things.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question, you can email us. The email address is livequestions@mpt.org. If you have a question you'd like us to ask, perhaps you have a tip for how you are coping, please let us know. So, Lisa, you specialize in families and children. Is there a particular age group that maybe has the most difficulty with this?
Right now, I'm seeing that in not so much younger children, but primarily maybe school and high school age. I I get a lot of questions that are pretty concrete. For example, just if I catch this, will I die? Am I ever going to be allowed to leave the house again? Are they going to shut down all the grocery stores? Particularly in school age children. Once you hit middle school and high school, there's also a lot of rumors that tend to go around, and some of that is misinformation. So that that causes a lot of people in that age group because they have trouble sifting through what's fact and what's fiction. And so I spend a lot of time trying to focus on facts only so that it doesn't spiral into something bigger. And usually that helps tone down the fear as well.
I guess most people can read their own kids pretty well, but sometimes they can keep things bottled up. I mean, do you see that?
I do. I think when a whole family unit is living in fear to some degree, maybe you have a family member who has had this. Maybe you're just nervous that you look at it. Maybe you are someone who has an underlying medical condition. A lot of times, family members try and protect each other, and it's no different from children. Children will try and protect their parents the same way parents try and protect their children. And so, a lot of what you want to look for if your child is not a verbal child is things like their sleep patterns. Are they sleeping at night? Are they eating? Have you noticed a loss of appetite or an increase in appetite? Do they withdraw? Do they isolate? Do they spend a lot of time hiding away from you? Because if they're doing those things or complaining of physical symptoms, I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, I think I'm sick. A lot of those are signs that something is not right. They might need to have you ask them instead, "Are you okay? Is there something you want to talk about?" Or share your fear. Say it's okay to be afraid, and I'm afraid too. We're going to get through it together. Something along those lines that encourage communication with your kids.
I don't know how much of your practice is in person versus remote, but I'm guessing you're doing a lot of Skype calls and Zoom and all that these days. Is it different from the therapist standpoint in terms of being able to pick up, some visual clues from the person you're talking to?
It's a little bit different. I think people are adjusting pretty well. I will say for children and teenagers, they're so used to technology that this seems to not be a huge transition, at least in my practice so far. I think for me, the therapist, I always prefer in person because you can read body language and eye movements and focus in on things that are a lot harder to see on the screen. But overall, even though I would prefer in person, everyone seems to be adjusting pretty well and would prefer just to be able to have their session rather than have to cancel mental health services until, the foreseeable future, which I think is detrimental to most people.
We read that this virus is especially difficult on people, pardon me, who have pre-existing health conditions. Is it the same from a mental health standpoint when somebody has underlying anxiety that this would make it worse?
I think so. I think that if you have an underlying mental health condition already, a situation like this tends to exacerbate the symptoms just a little bit. If we think about how we all feel collectively, and we think this is a fearful situation, an unknown situation, and then you add someone who's already anxious, this can increase mild anxiety or moderate anxiety to sheer panic. It's what tends to lead people to things, for example, like panic buy, which we've seen a lot of things. I need to go to the store and I need to buy every single thing on the shelf because we're in crisis and I may not be okay. That's all anxiety and essentially a survival mechanism. And we see a real big increase in that if you already are suffering from anxiety or mood disorder or depression, any of those things, the symptoms tend to get worse in a situation like this.
Lisa, I just have time for a paragraph or two on this, but how do people know when it's time to get help and where do you turn first?
I think that if you are finding that you have trouble, one is if you have trouble sleeping or you're noticing physical symptoms, you may be dealing with a lot of anxiety. If you find yourself having panic attacks, as in trouble breathing or racing thoughts, you have trouble focusing or focusing on your day, and really are having any of those symptoms, I would encourage you to reach out. And I think that anybody, even if you feel like it's mild, reaching out for support is a great way to just get some extra during the time and get some coping skills. So I
Very
would
good. Lisa, we're going to have to leave it there. Lisa Hughes joining us from Frederick. Thank you very much. And Direct Connection continues right after this.
Can you tell us what you know?
Turning back now to the race for the White House.
The State Board of Elections voted Thursday to set up a new election.
It must be a very emotional day.
The world changed in the blink of an eye.
Children are at the heart of this story.
Over the weekend, a Chinese-American group donated masks and other protective equipment to local hospitals. Joining us is Dr. Rajan Patel. Doctor, thank you for being with us. Tell us how this project came about.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I actually studied in China. I went to medical school in China, and I've been affiliated with various different Chinese groups, both China and in the United States. So through a few friends and a few contacts and my social media that's quite popular in China, some of the Chinese people found me. They know I'm a doctor. I regularly upload videos talking about health in Chinese and Mandarin. So this Chinese American group found me, and they were suggesting, they're asking me for suggestions in terms of which hospitals are in most need in this DMV area, particularly Maryland, of PPE and face masks. And so I did a little bit of research. I found out, but it was quite obvious just by asking a few doctors in town and looking through the statistics and the data. I gave them a list of hospitals that are, in most critical need of this equipment. And so they did a tremendous, great job. We actually collaborated together, and we were able to distribute over 100,000 face masks and a lot of other protective gear to the various different hospitals, including Holy Cross, as you may have heard of today.
These materials are in very short supply. Obviously, likely a big black market for them at this point. How were you able to come up with the supplies?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So our team of volunteers did a great job in the back end. I myself have this experience, somewhat have this experience as well. Recently, I've been trying to look into suppliers from China, and it's always hard, with the products coming out of China these days. But there is a way. You got to go through the proper channels and make sure the companies and factories that you get your products from are properly accredited in the U.S. as well, which all of our products are. And because of the connections, because of day and night effort of nudging people, calling people, trying to make deals, trying to negotiate deals, et cetera, and then getting the donation, which was from various different donors, both small and large. The group is called CASH, Chinese American Hospital. It stands for Chinese American Support Hospitals. So they basically, the volunteers established themselves as an organization, and as an organization, they were able to get some funding through the GoFundMe page, and using that money, we were able to find the right suppliers in China. Which I have a lot of contacts from China when I used to live there through the embassy. I'm a former U.S. state diplomat status holder, so I have some connections with some of the factories that are U.S. FDA approved, et cetera. And just by cold calling various different suppliers, we were able to come up with this tremendous package for the hospitals here in the U.S.
Doctor, I don't know how much your contacts there are able to talk about the medical side of things, your former colleagues, your fellow students, but what do you take away from China's experience with this virus?
Well, they were the first to be attacked, and I said this formerly as well on various different other interviews. And I strongly believe that there's a lot to be learned from the Chinese experience. So the doctors were first stricken with the virus in China. So that just naturally tells us from a time standpoint they're more experienced, but also from the number of patients they treat. I mean, I'm not saying they have more cases than we do, obviously not now, showing the numbers, but they, initially they had a whole lot of patients all at once in one area, Wuhan, and then it slowly spread from there. So I think they were suddenly struck with a whole lot at once. And so that gave him a lot of experience very quickly. And they actually created a manual. The doctors in China created a manual, which is now a public official a manual that's coming from the Chinese Department of Health, recommendations and guidelines for anybody who feels, it might be helpful for U.S. physicians and physicians in other countries as well. That's, it was that effort it was sponsored by Alibaba and Zhejiang University in China, and they have sent it to the U.S. And there are, committees and organizations in the U.S. such as the American College of Physicians, et cetera, that are reviewing that manual and thinking about possibly implementing some of those guidelines into our clinical practice here in the United States.
So in the United States, health officials here are now encouraging people to start wearing masks, especially non-medical grade, maybe homemade masks. I know you have a mask with you there. Can you explain how it works, or is this for the benefit of the person wearing the mask, the person who might be in the same room or the same space as that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, why do we wear a mask? That's a great question. And I think there is a lot of misconception going on. I really would like to clarify this from a scientific standpoint, but also from a practicality standpoint. A lot of times we're doubting what our politicians say. We're not sure if they're telling us the truth for various different reasons, et cetera. I just want to crack down to what logically makes sense from a scientific standpoint as a physician, but also from, practicality. Do we really need N95, et cetera? So why do we wear a mask? I think, as you all might know, the virus is transmitted through the droplets. So what are droplets? If you put a mirror in front of your face and start breathing without anything in front of you, eventually you'll notice there's some fogging up that happens on the mirror. That's basically what a droplet is. It's that fog, it's that moisture. Okay, so what we want to do is block that. Anything that's going to block that from happening, whether it's a piece of, cloth or a full-blown, full medical grade N95 mask, et cetera, it's gonna reduce that. It might not completely stop it. Obviously, there are pores within, certain masks or a cloth that will eventually create that fog, but it's going to take a lot longer to do that. So what does a mask do? It minimizes that risk, which is exactly what we want to be able to do, is to minimize it. We're not going to be able to, bring that risk down to zero, but at least we can minimize it. And that's why it's recommended that we all wear masks. And another thing is that a lot of people think, and I did a little survey of my own, I asked people, why do you wear a mask? And they're saying so that they don't get contaminated. No, I don't think it's to protect yourself only. It's more importantly, you're protecting others from getting infected. Like, for example, other vulnerable people that might be immune suppressed, for example, your grandmother or your grandfather, or somebody who has chronic comorbidities that might be more prone to the deadly effects of the virus. And if you have the virus, you might be transmitting it to, so you might be posing a risk to them. And that's why we really wear a mask. You can say that you wear a mask to protect yourself, yes, but we shouldn't get that false sense of security, because if you put on a mask, you can still get contaminated other ways. So, for example, if a droplet touches my eye and goes through my eye, I can get infected. So there are other ways of getting infected, such as, like I said, through the eyes and et cetera. So putting on a mask doesn't guarantee that you won't get infected. And I think the more important reason why doctors and the physician community and the CDC is recommending wearing masks is so that we protect others in case we have the virus in our respiratory system.
So doctor, whatever kind of mask somebody is putting on, what are the do's and don'ts?
Absolutely. Let's go through that. So here's my mask. First of all, I want to tell everybody that initially these masks were disposable. So you use them once and then you throw them away. Right now with the scarcity, people are asking, can I reuse a mask? That's a great question. Typically the answer would be no. But if for whatever reason, because like I said, it's better to put on something than to put nothing on. And do not ever, ever share masks. If you have a mask on your face, do not ever give it. Some people have been asking me, can I do that? And I think somebody actually did that. And that's a big no-no. Okay, do not ever share masks. Your mask is your own mask. If you are to reuse it, like for example, if I'm going to reuse this mask, because like I said, it's better to have something than nothing, make sure that when you put it away and take it off, Don't let this side touch. This is one of the biggest reasons why the CDC initially official guidelines was not to let us, they were saying don't wear masks. They were suggesting don't wear masks unless you have symptoms, right? Well, now it's changing, right? Even if you're asymptomatic, you're still recommended to wear masks. So if, the reason for that was that a lot of people, they accidentally, inadvertently will put the mask upside down onto a dirty surface and put it back on, and that will contaminate themselves. And that imposes a risk. Okay, so a good way to mitigate that would be to fold it in half. Okay, the surfaces should be shut, and this should always be at an acute angle, because when you put it on, you want to seal it right here anyways, right? So this little piece of wire here should always be turned as it is if you're going to be reusing it. So there you go. You put it in, you turn it, you flip it in half, and then you fold it into a half again, and then you can put it on your table and try to put it somewhere where it's disinfected. Maybe in a closet where your clothes are all washed between your clothes, or somewhere that the virus is least likely to be at. And then when you open it up, let's go step by step in terms of how do we put on a mask. Ideally, you don't want to touch, you want to minimize the touching, okay? So you don't want to touch the inside and the outside of the mask. You want to hold the two straps that you're going to put around your ear, okay, minimizing the touching. Step one, put it on. Step two, minimize let's reduce the creases. So that means we pull up and down vertically, and then seal this like I was saying earlier so that you have least amount of gap for contaminants to enter, and then least amount of gaps here, okay? That's the final step. But now there's an additional step. If you want to make this mask an N95, apparently what Apple has said, and this is backed by clinical data, Apple's engineers have said that if you have 3 pieces of rubber bands, you can essentially seal your mouth and your nose. And what will happen is this mask will have the same level of filtration as an N95. Okay, and logically, I don't know. First, if you ask me, I don't know if those numbers are accurate or not. But even if they're not accurate, at least I think there's definitely a difference, because you're sealing it off. That means you're minimizing, reducing the gaps and the porous areas where contaminants can enter. That's the whole idea here. So how do you do that? Use 3 pieces of rubber band. One's going to go all around this ear. The other one's going to go around that ear. I'll teach you how to put the rubber band on one side. You'll do that to the same side. This one's already put on, okay? So this is how you put it on. It's very simple. Just loop it around. In it goes. And that's it. Okay, so both sides are the same, all right? And then it's not going to be very comfortable, all right? But it's better than nothing. If you really want that extra level of protection, you can do this. Apparently, clinical data, Apple's saying that it does provide an additional barrier equivalent to an N95. Now, what you're going to do is make sure your mouth and your nose are sealed, but the mask has to be under the rubber band. Okay, so that means right here, you don't want this rubber band being over here, because that's going to create a gap. How do you test whether this is effective or not? The CDC has recommended you cover your mouth and blow hard. No air leaking out the sides. That means you're sealed. So now this is a sealed mask, which apparently is equivalent to an N95 in terms of filtration rate. So I'll take that off.
Very good.
So that we can.
Dr. Raj Patel, we appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now our Charles Robinson tells us how community leaders are getting involved.
On a Saturday morning in Randallstown, Maryland, there is a steady stream of cars looking for a box of food staples to take it through the week.
It's making sure that people are not only healthy and safe, which is why we're practicing social distancing, why we're asking people to stay home if they can. So there's the health aspect. It's preparing our hospitals for the cases we know that we're going to get. But it's also meeting the basic needs. It's feeding our seniors, feeding our young people. It's ensuring that people have access to their prescription drugs. And so it's really an all hands on deck approach to make sure that in this trying time we're meeting the response, and then we're also thinking about preparing for the recovery, so that when we come out of this together, we're finding ways to connect people back to jobs, back to other parts of their normal lives.
Just across the line in Baltimore City, Gwynns Falls Elementary School is a hub for children and families who need a nutritious meal.
Come and get something so you can have something to eat and go at home. That way I don't have to do no cooking. I put put this in the microwave, and I'm good to go.
Principal, give us an idea of why the city of Baltimore decided to use you as a focal point for food distribution.
So one of the things is equity and leverage. When we look across the city and we've identified the number of areas that have a potential need, they wanted to provide access to as many families as possible. So looking at our region of West Baltimore, they wanted to select Gwynns Falls to ensure that the families in our community are able to get access to both food and work packets. So looking across the city, looking at all of the various regions, ensuring that all of our families had as many of their needs met as best as possible.
Charles, thank you. In partnership with other public broadcasting stations, MPT's daytime broadcast schedule is changing as we support at-home learning.
In response to the coronavirus crisis and in aid of students, parents, and our Maryland teachers, MPT is devoting its broadcast day to at-home learning, featuring 3 distinct blocks of educational programming targeted to early learners, the middle grades, and high school. At-home learning on MPT starts Monday, April 6th.
For more on at-home learning, visit mpt.org, and please follow us on Twitter at MPT News. For all of us at MPT, thanks for watching, be safe, and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.